Start with what is right there. I have been making Maris Otter, that's this, 6 pounds, Cascade single malt and single hop beers. And I think I'm pretty much done with the Cascade. I need something else to try to compare it with. So I still consider this sort of part of the Maris Otter Cascade series, except that now it's a matter of tasting something different. And so I've got all these Fuggles, got 1 ounce apiece, and I'm going to put them in according to the times on this chart that I'll put up on the video here, just where you see the top of those curves. So I'll have 1 ounce in at the 60-minute mark, I think 1 at the 8-minute mark, and while I'm talking here, I'm not looking at the chart, so I don't remember where the other one is. It's somewhere around, I don't know, 30, or was it 20? I don't remember. But I'll put 1 ounce in there, and then I'm going to dry hop for 3 days, 1 more ounce, just as soon as the fermentation calms down just a little bit. But what's the Coopers there for? Well, let's walk over here. This here is the fermenter that I use for my single malt, single hop. But I also have a Coopers fermenter there. That's because I'm going to use my time wisely and brew a Coopers at the same time. So for the single malt and single hop, it'll be just dextrose, the Maris Otter, some Fuggles, and then over here, I'm going to use up the rest of my Golden Light dry malt extract, which with the bag, right, so it looks like it's about 4/10 of a kilo. I'm going to have to add some dextrose to get the, I don't know, maybe I should make a lower alcohol beer. I don't know. I'll think about it. But I'll probably add some dextrose to get the Thomas Cooper's Sparkling Ale up. And here we go. July 16th, July 25th, 2016 is when that went out of date. Now that is 10 months ago that it went out of date. So I don't have much confidence at all in the yeast. Let's see what the yeast is. Yeah, I know I haven't saved any of this. At least not that I've seen recently. Guess I can use this to decide how much dextrose to put in there. And what I'm going to use instead, I don't know, maybe I'll use it too. I'll put that in as well as this, I don't know. Probably not, but this is some Windsor yeast trub from a recently brewed beer. And I think there's probably enough yeast in there. I'm just letting that get to room temperature, which I will then use for the Coopers. So that's where I'm at now. I said I was going to do some kind of rattling. Get the bird out of the way. You haven't done anything awful up there, have you? Nope. Every once in a while, you just got to make sure she doesn't do something that you know that birds do every once in a while. Kind of thing doesn't bother me a whole lot, in the sense that I think of what people with dogs and cats go through, and you know what I'm talking about. And if, you know, cats, what do? They cough up hairballs, and the thing that really kind of... Now, don't get me wrong, I love cats, I love dogs, but there's a downside to everything. And the thing with cats is they climb into the litter box, and you think this is good, right? I mean, you don't have to worry about them pooping around the house, and you don't have to let them out, but what do? They climb in the litter box, and then they dig, and then they pee or poo or whatever, and then they dig in that poopy, uriny litter, which is now all over their paws, and the next thing you know, they're on the kitchen counter and they're everywhere else. So I feel like I'm spoiled rotten to have a bird. Now here, this was the Caribou Slobber from Northern Brewer, and it is where I got the trub, the Nottingham. Or was that what it was? Or was it Windsor? God, I already forgot. Must be Windsor. Let that go down a bit. I gotta admit, both the beers that I have on tap right now, I'm not too happy with. Maybe I'll talk about the other one when I pour it to drink it. It's my Otter Cascade single malt and single hop. Hang on. Since I'm tracking how much I drink for my diet, I always fill it all the way up because I know exactly how much that is. I'm going to let that drip. Oh, sure. Run down the side of the glass. Okay, where was I at? Got two gallons in there getting going. And I'm going to turn this off for a bit while I get a few things prepared. So I used some sanitizer to sanitize my glass. Is that going overboard? I don't know. But I use one of those, well, not just one, 2 or 3 of them to do my whole area. For my sink, I use, I call it porcelain cleaner, but it's advertised as toilet bowl cleaner, but what it really is Clorox, right? Sodium hypochlorite. So I make sure my sink is really well sanitized. This is coming to a boil because I have stirred in the 6-pound of Maillard Malt's Otter. And I really like these containers because look how clear I got it. I mean, the way I do that is I fill this one. I always save one of these. Fill this up with really hot water, and then after I pour this in, then I use a little at a time, about a third at a time, to rinse this out and dump it into there. The reason I'm using one of those is just so I can keep control of the volume. Each one of those is a half a gallon. So when I start out by, whoa, come on camera, there we go. I start out by filling this to 8 quarts, so I have 2 gallons, put it in there, get it up to boiling, turn the heat off, stir in one of those, rinse it out with one of those. I know I have a 3-gallon boil. I still haven't bought a hop sack, so I'm down to these Home Depot paint strainers tied up with fishing line. I don't know what I'm going to do when it comes time to add hops later on. I guess I'm going to have to pull it out, let it drain a little bit, drop it in the sink, get the fishing line off the top, and fill it up again. And I'm not talking about any of the things that I thought I was going to be talking about. What was that? Oh yeah, I got a question for you. Maybe this will kind of show up to see if anyone actually watches the video. Why don't you tell me what you think Homebrew Wednesday is? I'm going to turn this camera around. Now look at that, got it all cooled down. A little bit of a change in my hop schedule. 2 changes. Number 1, I forgot that I was going to have to add hops in at the 8-minute mark, and I left my original hops. How did this work? Yeah, I put my second drop in and then set a timer for 22 minutes because that's how long they were supposed to be in there. And of course I mix them in the bag with the, well, I guess that's not relevant. At any rate, the problem was I should have set it for 14 minutes. That way I could take it out and put in the last hop drop, which would be for 8 minutes. But I had it in there for 22, which means that I had an additional 8 on that for the last hop drop. So my actual hop schedule is 60 minutes for 1 ounce, 30 minutes for another ounce, 8 minutes for another ounce, and then I'll dry hop the last ounce. Except for one little thing. I got a little bit behind on my preparedness, and although the wort was no longer sitting on a burner that was keeping it boiling, the burner was off, but I think it sat there for about 5 minutes while I got some things prepared, like the wort chiller. So I think that actually adds like 5 minutes to all my hop stuff. Even though I'd pulled the hops out, right? I took them out and stuck them right here inside the sink. It's really like a tea, right? So, I mean, once they've sat inside the water and bled out into the wort, you have all the oils in there and stuff. It's I don't think it matters that you pull the bag out that much. I think what matters is that you've got the stuff in there. So I think I have to add 5 minutes to all that, so it's more like 65, 35, and 13, probably. Except that the wort was cooling down from a boil, so it wasn't quite that hot. So I'm just adding that for completeness. And as long as I'm at it, why don't I tell you a little bit something about me? I have a mathematics degree, and I am 2 classes away from finishing a physics degree. Those 2 classes are particle physics, which may be a class that's not even at other universities, because it's sort of one that's sort of a hodgepodge of put together a bunch of little silly things. And, it's like Feynman diagrams, things like that. And it was the second class, there's a full year, like is a 2 semesters in a year. The first semester of one series is called Quantum Statistical Mechanics, and then Quantum Statistical Mechanics Part 2, right? Part 2 is the other one that I would need to finish, and by finish I mean get a grade in. Now the thing is about these classes is I've already had them, but I actually bailed on them when I got overwhelmed by working full-time 40 hours a week for one job, plus about 20 hours a week for another job, and I really needed to do the work at the time to make ends meet, and I ended up bailing on those 2 courses. And the question is, do I go back, 2 more courses, that's it, that's all I need in order to get the physics degree? Do I go back and take them? And my answer is no. And the reason why is because it's not going to add to my, employability, I don't think. I mean, I've really looked into this. For somebody my age, I'm about a half a century old. It's really not going to make that much difference between having a math degree versus having a math degree and a physics degree. It's not going to make any difference. So why spend the money and the time? I mean, it takes a lot of time. And the money's, it's, I don't know, it'd probably cost $2,500 for me to go back and take just those 2 courses. And that's if they're if they're offered in the same semester, and I don't think they are. So I'd probably be around $3,200, I think. And to get what out of it? Nothing. Well, how about the knowledge? How about learning it? I can learn a whole lot better from books. So if I really want to learn it, I can sit down and do it on my own. No reason to do it. But the reason I bring that up is because the kind of thing that I do is like what you see on this spreadsheet here, where I have figured out, this is really just stuff that I knew in the 8th grade, but here you see desired wort temp, 31.5 degrees. That's because I measured how much wort I had left after it boiled for a while, and then figured out, I input the temperature of my cold water, and I knew what I needed to cool my wort down to get everything down to the right temperature before adding the room temperature water. Spilled my beer again. Gosh darn it. In order to get everything perfect, and I don't know, that may be interesting to some people to know that you can do that, because I think most people don't. They just sort of add a little bit of cold water and see the temperature, and they add a little bit more, and then they added just a little bit too much. And I think it's a little easier to use a spreadsheet and get the formulas right. But got everything done. I just got to go add the water to my Otter to bring it up to the right height, to 5 gallons, a little bit more. Then add my yeast, and then I will be back in a couple of weeks, I guess, when it comes time to taste test. Well, it's been about a day and a half, and as you can see, it's going pretty good there in the Otter Fuggles container. Over here, this, yeah, it's still going. If I could get it to focus, maybe it'll show it. Every once in a while, you'll see a little bit of debris churning around in there. But it's, there's a bit right there. So it's slowed, I don't know if it's slowed a whole lot, but that's the sparkling ale with the trub that I just saved out of a previous batch, and it looks like it's doing pretty good. Okay, I just twisted the lid a little bit, thinking that would help. And there it goes. Got a nice seal again. Very Star Sand paint strainer that I've got the hops in, and look, you can see some green in there, which means they are leaking through the paint strainer, but not too much, I guess. Time for a nice little taste test on the sparkling ale. Yeah, it's been over 2 weeks. Had it under 30 pounds of pressure for 2 days. In the kegerator. And it's still a little flat. Little bit surprised at that. Boy, it's good though. Nothing's overdone about it. Let's see, it was 1.060 to begin with, and now it's 1.010. Comes out to, I don't remember, something like 6%. It's one of the nice things about using Cooper's kits, right? This was out of date, and it's really good. You can usually count on consistency. The yeast, of course, was in bad shape, and I had to use the trub from a previous batch. Fermented out pretty good, and it tastes really good. So there's that. This is definitely not the way that I like to get a sample. But since there's no spout on the front of this thing, I don't know any other way, so I'm star sanding a plastic scoop, and I just got to take the top off and dip it in. How do you guys get samples out of these things? Use some big turkey baster looking thing to pull out a bunch of brew? Whereas I'm using this little dipping thing. Either way, it's kind of an annoying way to go. And I got a little too much out. Gives me something to drink. Not bad. Not bad at all. Alright, now let's take a look at it. Got a little bit of a Krausen collar up there. Down here we have this yeast that I've become so accustomed to with my single malt and single hop Cascades. Notice how it's sort of clumped together. I've had a few of those floating. Not nearly as many as in the last batch. Right now you can hear the bubbling of my CO2 tank. Keeping this tank full of CO2 instead of oxygen as this thing is draining out. Now, there went a little bit of yeast, which leads to the second part of this, is that I'm going to filter it. Got my filtering equipment right here. I'm actually going to take these out and replace them, since I don't actually know. Well, actually, I'm going to figure it out. This is much heavier than this one. So I think this is the one that filters the 1 micron, and this filters the 5 micron. I'm going to go grab some that I know for sure and see which one's heavier, and then I'll use that to judge. But I'll put those in line, filter it out, and it'll be ready to carbonate. So here we go with the sanitation step. Got this keg filled with Star San. It's going through the 5 micron filter first. Then it'll go through the 1 micron filter. Get those full of Star San. Now, one thing that I've learned recently, or at least I read it on the internet and accepted it as true, is that Star San is essentially just Coca-Cola. Now, if you read the ingredients, you'll see more than phosphoric acid on it, but that's pretty much what Coca-Cola is, at least the water side of Coca-Cola is phosphoric acid. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I think so. And I think it was even said in one of these discussions that the maker of Star San will actually make a thing of Star San and drink it. I don't advise doing that at all. I don't even know if it's true. But I'm no longer worried about it being in my beer. After all, Coca-Cola is pretty darn safe. And here's the little ball that I should have had in this keg with all the Star San. Instead, it's down in here with some Star San, and I had to open this up again to put it in. This is what is used to let me know how much beer is left in the keg and when it's about to run out. So a little bit of oxygen has been introduced in there. I'll purge it just a little bit before I get going. But a little reminder, gotta get that thing in there on time next time. Beer is flowing. Come around here. That's the 5 micron. It's blowing a bunch of foam through the 1 micron, the stuff that basically just Star San left over. Now it's filling up with beer, the 1 micron. There's plenty of yeast in here, by the way. That's why I'm filtering it. I knew there would be. I would just see these big clumps of it going through the tube into the keg. Starting to back up. I think I'll open that and leave it open. So that's filtering. Now this is kind of interesting right here. Got 10 pounds per square inch over on this side. And in between the filters, there's only 5. Which means there's a pressure drop of 5 pounds per square inch in there, which means that thing is doing some filtering. It is, I think it's where the yeast is mostly getting caught. And on this other side, who knows what the pressure drop is. But I think most of the filtering is taking place in the 5 micron filter. Finally, I get to taste it. 20 days in the primary. Let's see. 2 days carbonating at 30 pounds per square inch. And considering that I used a Whirlflock tablet and I filtered through 2 filters, 5 micron and 1 micron, I'm a little surprised at this thing. It is quite cloudy, and it wasn't cloudy when I got it out of the keg. So is that chill haze, maybe? I mean, I know the yeast had to have been filtered out. I don't know. I don't think it's chill haze, because I just don't get chill haze. What would be different about this one? Smells good. Can you hear the music in the background? Less than 1 in 1,000 of you will recognize it. And hopefully YouTube doesn't recognize it, or I'm going to have to go through a taste test again. Or do something, delete the video and start over because they send me threatening things. It's kind of like the last one that I dry hopped at a similar time. It's a little overbearing in flavor. And dry hopping is supposed to be for aroma. And there is aroma to this. It's aroma that seems like it's like I can smell the Maris Otter in there, but I can also smell something else, which presumably is the Fuggles, but it has a powerful flavor to it. Not much bitterness. I don't like a whole lot of bitterness, though. But right now, this is a good beer. And they tend, for me, I don't know about everybody else, but beers, they constantly change. Alexa, stop. For those of you who have Amazon Echoes, I apologize for that, but I don't want that music to get flagged by YouTube. As I was saying, as I proceed through a keg, the flavor of the beer changes always. At the bottom of the keg, it tastes very different than the top of the keg. I used to wonder if it was contamination due to oxygen, but I'm ruling that out. You can see in this keg right there where that little dot is, that's as much as I've consumed of the Cooper's Sparkling Ale, and it already changed flavor a little bit. It started out, I think, a little more bitter than I would normally like. And I think what happens is that whatever's in the beer that gives it the flavor, be it the hops or whatever else, I think they either sink or they float. Maybe some of the stuff sinks and some of it floats. And so you get this change in the taste of the beer. And so the bottom gets sucked out first, and then it all lowers down to where the spout is at the bottom, and pretty soon what's at the top is going up through the spout, and keg's gone, but it just seems to change flavor along the way. And this is unusual. I'm thinking that with a wedge of lemon, this might be pretty good. I always try to decide what would I think if I was sitting in a brew pub and I ordered some unfamiliar beer and it came and it was something like this. I don't know. I kind of wonder, is this a little rough around the edges for a brew pub? Oh, look at all that lacing. That's interesting. Or would I think, wow, this is unique, good stuff for a brew pub. But that's it for this video. So if you'd like to see another proper homebrewing video, that'll be at the lower right, your lower right. And at the top right, I will put a link to the single malt and single hop playlist. And in the upper left, it'll just be a surprise, and then in the lower left is where you can click to subscribe. See ya.